Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today, and welcome to this Advanced Performance Management in Focus webinar support for the December 2025 exams. My name is Hazel and I work as an Education Partner Support Manager here at ACCA. Our session today will focus on Make Your Marks, Quick Wins and Study Strategies, where you'll learn how to achieve marks you can secure quickly with smart exam techniques and focus practice. Sean Purcell has joined us today to deliver the session, and he has been involved in training and development of finance staff for over 20 years in both the UK and over 40 overseas countries. He runs ACCA ALP online courses and has given lectures to ACCA students and tutors for over 25 years. He's also been awarded the PQ 2020 Lecturer of the Year and came runner-up twice. So this is just a short recap of Sean's expertise, but you can access a detailed profile in the speaker bio section on your screen. So during the session, Sean will explore effective exam techniques, discover smart strategies, and give advice on time management for the exam. He'll also recommend what to include and how to focus your studies and practice during the last few weeks leading up to the exam day. And towards the end of the session, he'll also cover some live questions coming in from you in the Q&A box. So before I hand things over, I'd like to run through a quick few housekeeping items. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen there are a number of buttons that you can select. So please ensure that both the slide and the media player icons are selected because you'll need both of these throughout the webinar. You can also use the chat function to engage with fellow participants, but please avoid sharing any personal information in the chat. And also, if you look for the icon that resembles a file, clicking on this will give you access to helpful materials related to today's webinars, including some direct links. You can rearrange your screen to suit and resize the windows if you need to, but if at any point you can't hear what we're saying or you can't see any of the visuals, then please refresh your browser. By registering for this webinar, you'll get an email tomorrow with all the details on how to watch it again, so please don't worry if you miss anything or you run into any technical issues. You'll be able to catch up with the recording later. I'm going to hand over to Sean in a moment and I will be back with you towards the end of the session. But if you'd like to ask a question, then please post it in the Q&A section. And just a quick note, we might not be able to respond to everybody individually, whether through the chat or verbally, but we will do our best to share questions and answers that are helpful for everyone. And now I will pass over to Sean.
Thank you very much, Hazel, and welcome everybody, wherever you're from. Just to make sure the chat is working, maybe you can let us know where you are from. Pop that in the chat and we will see. The main objective of this, just to put things in context, is we have got 4 weeks till the exam. Yep. So what is our behavior for the next 4 weeks so that we give ourselves the best possible chance to do well in our advanced performance management exam? This webinar is not designed to get dragged into minutiae of whether it's 7% or 10% or whatever. It's designed to give you a strategic overview of what you need to do and how you are going to maximize your success in the exam in December. Yep, that's what we're here to do. In terms of the areas that we're going to look at, I'm going to look at exam technique, which you may have heard before, but if you read every examiner report, it is an area where students don't do themselves justice on. I'm going to talk about ways in which you can more easily gain marks from the marker. I'm going to give you some advice on time management, which is something that students really struggle with, and then talk about what I would like you to do for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And having done that, we're going to do open it up to a Q&A session about anything you want really, although someone's asking me already about remote exams. I think there's it's not going to affect your December exam. So let's try and stick to exam technique for advanced performance management. They will be the questions that I will be mainly dealing with. And that's kind of what everyone signed up for, if I'm honest. So we're going to stick to that. So if you can stick your questions to the December exam on advanced performance management and exam technique, that'll be fantastic. So if I give you a reminder of the key components of the advanced performance syllabus, I'm sure you know it, and I'm not here to talk about the syllabus, but it starts with management accounting at the applied knowledge level. And yet the things that you learn there are applicable to advanced performance management. It also brings in performance management, so adding the concepts of management accounting, but the ethics and professional skills module also plays a big role. Yep. So that basically introduces how the examining team want you to think, I would say. And the APA exam is at a completely different level to the management accounting exam. And I think the key word that I'm going to dwell on is the word synthesis. This is used if you look at any performance management examining team comments, they talk about synthesis. And basically what that means is you're given information, you take that information, you connect it, and then you draw your own conclusions and appropriate points to those pieces of information. So that's what it's about. It's not about just doing calculations. I'm sure you know, but I'm just stressing that. Yep. So when we're looking at advanced performance management, I think we need to remember a few things. Yeah. The first thing we need to remember is advanced performance management is not about rote learning of technical knowledge. Okay. You're not really going to pass it by rote learning technical knowledge. It's about application of what's going on in the context of the business. The word context, really important. It also, we need, when looking at requirements, to really look at what the verb is saying. And I think to develop our points in the context, a technique I find very useful is for you to think of when you've come up with a point, why have you made that point? What's the so what? Yeah, so what you've made that point? What's the consequence of what you've just said? Why have you said it? Yep. And there's that word again, synthesis. We've got information here, and everywhere. We need to bring it together and make sense of it. Yep. We need to draw our own personal conclusions, and we're definitely not copying and pasting out of the exhibits. We need to observe the format which we are asked to present in, and we need to make sure professional skills of commercial acumen, skepticism, communication are all observed. And I think, how would you do it in the workplace is a good place to start when we're thinking about professional skills. Yeah. So they are very different to the skills that you would need when you are doing a performance management or management accounting exam. Okay, so let's have a look at some exam technique and what do we need to make sure that we do with regards to exam technique. Yeah. Charles has asked, can I assist on mark allocation and time management? Of course, I'm going to do that now. So what are we saying about exam technique? The first thing I'd say about exam technique is context is king. Yep. And when we talk about context being king, well, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is that you need to make your point in the context of the scenario. Yeah. It's not a regurgitation of technical fact. It's about how the calculation you just made impacts on the business you're talking about. Yeah. And again, if you think about so what, why, what is the consequence of the calculation, then you're going to be scoring marks. You have proven on performance management and management accounting that you can do calculations. Yeah. So there's less emphasis on awarding you marks for doing less calculations. Yep. It's about making sure the point you make is, synthesized into the business scenario relevant in the particular exam you're sitting. Yep. So we need to not get, as a result, too het up with calculations, and we need to make clear, structured, logical, rational arguments on why we have the opinion which we had, and to show that calculations aren't the be all and the end all. And I understand you have up until now been fed a diet where it's all about calculations, and then suddenly on APM you're asked to talk about application and skepticism and stuff like that. But that's really important. You've proven your ability to calculate, and if you get stuck on a calculation, it would be perfectly acceptable for you to assume a figure and then from that figure develop an argument with regards to what the business should do. Yeah. Yep. Because what's being examined is your judgment as a strategic level student. Yeah. Not your ability to do calculations. And the marker consistently says they're much more interested in your judgment, and your judgment results from synthesizing the information and then drawing a conclusion. Okay. So analysis is king. Those of you who say to me sometimes, I've done all the calculations, why didn't I get a good mark? Well, because it's not all about calculations. Yep. The other thing, good technique, is you are given spreadsheet. And again, I'll mention this later, but are you familiar with the new iAssess platform? Have you been doing sample mocks on there? Have you been copying and pasting on there? Have you been doing calculations on there? It's a new platform. There might be slight differences to the old platform. You might never have been on the platform before. Please, if I was doing my driving test, would I get in a car that I'm taking the test in before the test, or would I practice on a bicycle? Yeah, the equivalent of practicing on a bicycle is doing your exam answers in Word and Excel. There is spreadsheet and word processing functionality on the iAssess platform, but it is not Microsoft Word. It is not Microsoft Excel. It's a bit clunkier, actually. The key thing is you need to get familiar with it. Yeah. So the way in which we do our calculations is in the spreadsheet area, because there's spreadsheet functionality, which will enable them to happen much more quickly. And then we have a reference. You can do it as an appendix 1 or workings 1. Whatever you do, make it very clear to the marker what you are referring to. So on your spreadsheet, you'll have workings 1, workings 2, and then in your word processing answer, where the marking takes place, with reference to workings 1, we got a result of this. Does that make sense? So you then, having made that calculation in your word processing area, it's summarized, and then what you do is you make a coherent, a logical, I say a cogent argument there. That's what I want you to do. Okay. So don't do your calculations and your arguments in the word processing area, and don't do your don't do your calculations in the word processing area, and don't do your arguments in the spreadsheet area. You do a summation of the calculation in the word processing area. That's where you develop your coherent logical arguments. The deep maths is done in the spreadsheet. Yep. So really important that we discipline ourselves that way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show how this actually works in a real exam paper. So what we're going to look at, I chose something that you can all get access to, and we can all get access to on the ACCA website, the advanced performance. You don't have to look at it now, but maybe you might want to look at it again. This is just, say I see a question. This question you can look at. It's from the December 24 what we have a question here, the first question, where we have 50 marks broken up into 3 areas. We're asked to look at performance reporting, we're asked to look at benchmarking, and we're asked to look at standards. Yeah. The bit I am going to just demonstrate this is the area of benchmarking. So if we were faced with this question in the exam and we've got something on benchmarking, what are we going to do? Well, we are first of all going to look at the marks available, and there are 14 marks. Yeah. So that's the first thing that drives what we say. And we work back from that 14 marks. But I also said earlier that context is king. So when we're looking at context is king, what do I mean by that? Well, how do we get the context for this question? Well, what we would need to do with regards to our context, the first thing we need to do is we are given in Exhibit 1 in our exam. It's never easy on advanced performance management. We have to go looking for stuff. Exhibit 1 tells us about who the company is and what do they do. Yeah. And here we've got a company, J-Land. They're a medicines regulator. They do testing for medicines in J-Land on behalf of the government. Yeah. So that's what they're about. The controls in the business come from the government. The trustees of the business are appointed by the government. Funding's from the government, but the government's a bit under pressure to reduce costs, and it wants this kind of regulator to become financially independent. Yeah, they've recently appointed a new CEO. They talk about the balanced scorecard and have, as a result, set a number of performance indicators linked to the balanced scorecard. So that's kind of what's going on. There's a new CEO with performance indicators, balanced scorecard. Yep. So that's the context. That's what's happening. In terms of how many marks do we have? Well, we've established that we've got 14. Some of you might say, well, I only need to do 7 points. I think that's a little bit risky, if I'm honest. I think I would be trying to get about 70% of the marks. That would be my general rule of thumb. Yep. And so I think I'm going to try to get about 10 marks or so. Yep. So that's what I'm going for. Let's be safe. Let's try and get 10 marks or so. That is going to enable us to get a good pass and keep us in the safety zone, just in case some of our points are a little bit weak. Yep, it's important that they're not. So we need to know a little. So that's our first thing. We've got our plan. We want to try and get 10 points. Okay, how do we break this down more then? What can I do to break it down more? Well, again, the original question doesn't really help us too much, so we have to look at another exhibit. And if just in case you're not familiar with this past paper, if we look at Exhibit 3, this is where it talks a little bit more about benchmarking. Yeah, and there's detailed explanation here, and it's very important that we stick to what is said in these exhibits and don't go off on tangents. Read examiners' reports. People, go into all kinds of areas which were not required. What that does is gets no marks, but it also takes time away from mark scoring. Yep. So make sure you are, all over it. So if I look at what we have here, we've got a request to evaluate the various types of benchmarking. Okay. Evaluate them. Think about the verb. We've then got a request to recommend the benchmarking which the company's sole seat should use. Yep. And then we evaluate the suitability of the comparators that we have been given. Yeah. So there's 3 separate bits there. Yeah. It seems easy, but always break them down as the question does and as we've done here. So if we now refer back to the marking scheme, 14 marks for maximum marks, but anything over 50 is wasted energy. I am playing it safe and trying to get about 70% of the marks. So how do I break this question down? Yep. Well, first of all, we've established three main areas. Yep. And on those highlighted things. So we're basically dividing the 10 marks we said we were at, or the 10 points rather we said we were after, by 3. So that's 3 or 4 points we need to develop for each of those. Yeah. And that should get us a very good, safe pass mark. And yeah, it seems simple to do it that way, but that's exactly what you need to do. And unfortunately, whatever happens in an exam, I'll talk more about how we can deal with that in a moment. But if you're going to maximize your marks, you just stick to what is mentioned and don't go off on tangents. Yep. So let's have a look when answering questions of this nature. Smart strategies, which I would recommend that you follow. And if you do, you will give yourself the best opportunity to maximize your marks. I've just got a question there from Charles saying, it's not 14 over 2. It's more like 1 mark per point. 50% of 14 would be 7, Charles. I'm saying to just get 50% or only aim for 50% is a little bit unsafe. Yep. Yeah, I would try and get about 70%. So I'm trying to get about 10 points out of 14. Yep. Hopefully that clears your question up. Yep, that's what I'd say there. So hopefully that helps. I'm just having a look at other what are the techniques in answering questions. I'm going to do that, Mahado, in a moment. Yeah, okay. I would, to be safe, I would go for 1 mark per point. I think that is a safe way to approach things. I'm trying to teach you a safe strategy to maximize your marks. So when we are presenting these points, let's talk about some smart strategies. The first thing I'd say is you need to make the marker's job easy. And one of the best ways you can do that is utilize white space and utilize subheadings. Why I say that is because it's really important to, wave at the marker. Here's my point. Can you give me a mark for this point? Yep. However, if we are presenting our answer like that, this answer will be exactly the same as an answer I'll show you in the moment, but there is a danger when presenting in a very compact form that you miss things. Yep. If you think about an advertisement, there's no way they would explain things like that. They would break it up into separate points so that the message is more clearly understood. So there's a danger when we don't use white space and subheadings that the marker who's under a lot of pressure, time pressure, marking exams, might miss your point. And that's kind of the last thing that you want to happen, is having your points missed. So much better to adopt something like this. Yep. And basically, as I said there before, you give a point. Come on, marker, is this worth a mark? It sends a message. Here's my point. Give me a mark, please. Yeah. So that's the way to do it. And it's not going to get lost in other points. It's completely separated. It's almost, I could talk to you like this, or I could make a point and then have a breath. That is the written equivalent of making the marker or making the message more clearly understood. Yeah, so please take that and do that. And we're able to make these separate points because if you think what we did earlier, we actually did a plan. It's amazing how many people don't plan their answer. They just get stuck in. But we thought about what we were going to say. We thought about how much we were going to say in line with the marks that were available. Simple techniques to adopt that many students don't do. Yeah. And the plan, where some people ask me a question, or I'm sure they will, where do I do my plan? Personally, I would do my plan in the word processing area. I would make it very clear that it is a plan, and I might copy and paste, requirements into the word and make it very clear this is not an answer, this is a plan to help the marker again. But yeah, and then sometimes you can copy and paste your plan into your answer and then flesh it out. So some of the bullet points you made in your plan can become subheadings in your answer. Yeah, it just saves a bit of time. The other thing that might help is normally if you get over 45 in the exam, the examining team will review your script. They want you to pass. Yeah. So they will go back and have a look and see, is there any way we can get you up to a pass level? If you have maybe put a plan in place, they might look at that plan and they might see from the logic you expressed in your plan that actually maybe you didn't verbalize it so well, but I can see what you mean. And yeah, I think you're worth a pass. I wouldn't create a plan to expect that, but a plan has that benefit. Okay. So that would be key. That would be key. So we use white space and subheadings. What else do we do? Well, we have a logical order in the way in which we present our argument. And what I mean by that is we don't jump around. Yeah, we are going to be dealing with the requirements as they were asked. So if we just quickly remind ourselves how they were asked, we had the first point made in yellow there, and we deal with that. And then we have the next point made in green, and we deal with that. And then the next point in purple, we deal with that. We could even copy and paste that and then, adjust it slightly to have it as a subheading, and then have 3 points with maybe a subheading and white space. Really easy to mark, really easy to follow, really logical. That's all you need to do. Okay, so that's what we need to make sure we do there. Okay. What else? Well, we've done this, I've demonstrated it, but the answer we gave was reflective of 70% of the 14 marks. We gave 3 separate points. We aimed for 3 or 4 separate white-spaced subheadinged points with verbs and adjectives that we contextualized in the scenario. That's going to get us about 10 marks. That's going to get us a good pass. So yeah, we did that. And there's just to explain it. We were looking 3 areas. 5 points for each. Yeah, you probably won't have time to do that. But if you really want to get 100%, you don't need it. And it's very important that we give our points in the time we have available. I'm going to talk about time management in a moment, but that's key. So some people, you're not going to often get 100%, and people who are trying to get 100%, well, that's mad. So we make the marker's job easy with white space and subheadings. We have a logical order. What we write is reflective of the marks. Yep. And we also need really, really strict time management. Yeah. I would see every exam as a project management exercise in mark acquisition. That's how I see it. It's a project management exercise in mark acquisition. Yeah. So how then do we manage our time? How do we manage our time? Well, let's have a look at this. Firstly, like anything we manage with a budget. So to manage our time, what we need is a strict time budget. So what does a strict time budget look like? Well, to be honest, having a strict time budget, we have an exam of 195 minutes. Well, I would say we're probably roughly going to spend, 35 minutes reading and planning. Okay. So if we take that off our 195, that leaves us with about 160 minutes to answer the exam, taking into account reading the exhibits, planning the answer. I then divide that remaining time of 160 minutes by 80. And why I divide it by 80 and not 100 is because the professional skills marks take no time to acquire. They are awarded in the style in which we present our answer. Yeah. So that gives us about 2 minutes per mark. And as I say, any exam is a project management exercise in mark acquisition. So if we go back to the question we were talking about a moment ago, that question had 14 marks. On that question, I would therefore be spending 28 minutes. Yeah, I might even break those 28 minutes into roughly about, 9 minutes for the first point, 9 minutes for the second point, and 9 minutes for the third point, each of which were going to be 3 or 4 points each. Yeah, that's how we manage projects. That's how you manage time. Now, just to drive home the point, I would always write down with my time when I start the question and when I finish the question. So I am acutely aware of when I need to leave. If you do think you're going to get more marks, please don't think that. Lots of research shows that after we've acquired the first 50% of the marks, the time required to acquire the second 50% is much longer than acquiring the first 50%. So you need to get at least the first 50% in the bag. If you've got time, get a bit more, but don't go over time trying to get those marks in the 50 to 100% area, because they're going to take a lot longer to get, and your time is far better focused on getting the first 50% of all of the requirements. Okay, that's the golden rule in time management. You have a limited amount of time in the exam, and if you spend too long on a particular answer, that takes time away from acquiring marks on a later answer. And that's how people fail with time management. So just be very structured, as I've explained, and you'll be fine. If you finish your exam, you could come back, but it's highly unlikely you will have that time. So we make the jobs of the market easy with white space and subheadings. We have a logical order. We reflect the marking scheme. We answer our questions and requirements in the time available. And we don't just give kind of generic because or it's good. We are a strategic advisor. Yeah. So we need to be using proper business language. And I think it's useful. I had a student who was doing an SBL course with me who didn't really speak English that well. Yep. She won a prize with me in SBL. And how she won a prize was, she said, look, how am I going to improve what I would describe as business English? Yep. How am I going to improve it? I said, well, it will be good if you could read business English regularly. And she says, well, what should I read? She worked in an office where they had all kinds of economic. So she said, look, I can read The Economist. I read the FT. I read the Harvard Business Review. And she made herself read it every day. And the benefit of that would be that the language used, the terminology used, the sentence construction used, the arguments used start to rub off. Yeah. And people who have a good command of business English, should we say, don't make generic statements. They make really good strategic arguments because they have picked that up from reading what business journalists talk like all the time. So I think that's a top tip if you want to make your statements rich and impressive. Is we all speak English, but a lot of us don't speak good business English. This particular lady didn't really speak English very well, but she took my advice and she won a prize in SBL. So a good little tip there. So this would be a generic statement. So tutor A is a great tutor. Okay, so why, that's not a great thing to say. There is no explanation there. There's no why. Yeah, there's no consequence of why they're a great tutor. Yeah, so you've got to explain it. You've got to let the markers know. I mean, you've drawn a conclusion that tutor A is a great tutor, but I don't know how you have come to that conclusion. So why is tutor A a great tutor? Yeah, why are they a great tutor? So why might they be a great tutor? Well, I would say tutor A is a great tutor because, or why. So the word because, they're an approved ACCA approved tutors, so they're an approved advanced learning provider. Yeah. And they've gone, and as an advanced learning provider, the ACCA would have vetted them. Yep. So there's a lot of fake news about APM and SBL and SBR on all kinds of social media, but there's no fake news on the ACCA website, and there's no fake news from approved learning providers. Yep. So they're a great tutor because they're part of an approved learning provider. They might be a great tutor also because they have had their articles published in ACCA magazines. Maybe they were voted PQ Magazine Tutor of the Year. That's an award. But, there is, what I've given here is a reason why. If you don't give a reason why, you're going to lose lots of marks. So always think about because, so what, the consequence. It just makes you say more things. That's what I'd like you to do. So what are we, just to keep going back to, we're using white space, we're using subheadings, we logically develop our points in the context of the marks, in the context of the time available. We don't use generic statements, and we practice mocks on the ACCA platform, as I said before. If you're practicing for your driving test, you would practice in the car you're taking your test. Do not practice it on Word and Excel. Your exam is not done in Word and Excel. Your exam is done on ISS, which has a slide functionality, a word processing functionality, and a spreadsheet functionality. That's where you practice. That's how you learn. Again, there is evidence that students regularly copy and paste from exhibits. The markers, they mark lots and lots and lots of papers. They're so familiar with the exam. They know when you do this, it doesn't look professional. It doesn't get any marks. It just wastes time. All you need to do is take that information and draw your own conclusions. That means you synthesize that information. That's where you're going to get awarded marks. There's no marks for copy and pasting. And to be honest, if I was a chief executive employing you as a consultant, I wouldn't think you're very good value for money. So that's technique. Let's talk importantly about what we're going to do for the next 3 or 4 weeks. How are we going to approach things for the next 3 or 4 weeks? Well, here's a list of things I would tell my students to do. The first thing I would tell them to do is they must make their time as effectively used as possible. And to do that, they need a timetable of living. Not a timetable of study, but a timetable of living. So you need strict control of your work, your sleep, time with friends and family, and a little bit of time for study. If you don't look after all of these things, you'll become burnt out. If you don't get good sleep, your cognitive functioning will deteriorate. Sleep is like putting petrol in the tank. And if you're getting if you're stressed, maybe practice a bit of meditation. It's shown to work absolute wonders. So everyone knows if you get stressed in an exam, rather, forewarned is forearmed, and you can do something about it. Don't just say, oh, I'll get stressed or a panic. That's going to cost you marks in the exam. So make sure there's some great resources on the ACCA website, which talk about mental health and breathing exercises. So go and seek out those videos. Maybe we can put them in a link. But those videos are there because the ACCA know that students get stressed. They know a student is very capable, but sadly, because of stress or panic, they don't do themselves justice in an exam. And they provide resources to help you deal with that. But you can't really deal with that the night before. This needs to be built into your timetable of living over the next few weeks. And if you think about your cognitive strength. Your brain is a muscle. If I was training for a marathon, I'd be doing training runs. If I'm training for an exam, I'm giving good nutrition to my brain. I'm helping my brain deal with stress. To help me get better sleep, I might do a bit of meditation, which gives a very pure form of relaxation, which again is when your brain repairs itself and knits all the stuff you put into it together. So look at those things. There are resources available on the ACCA website. Do you understand the functionality of the iAssess platform? If you don't, well, you have every opportunity to do so over the next 4 weeks, and to not do so is crazy. Yep. It would be good to go and assign some mocks to yourself, practice those mocks, see how you get on in the time available, realize that time is a big thing, and that if we apply my time management techniques I said earlier, that's really going to help you. I've told you it helps you. If you don't believe me, do it, experience it, and then you will believe me. Unfortunately, the ACCA can't really control people saying things on Facebook and other social media. And to be honest, across many of the examinations, there's an awful lot of rubbish. If a person is saying something on social media, do they have articles published on the ACCA website? Yeah. Are they an approved learning provider? I can guarantee they're probably not. Yeah. So just ignore them. Yep. Ignore. It's a lot of fake news on there, an awful lot of fake news. Make sure that you look at the resources available, the articles. A lot of exam questions are often inspired by articles. So have a look, and the articles reflect what's going on in the current, performance management world. So make sure you're familiar with them. Maybe make your own summation of those articles so that they when you make your own summation, don't type them, write them out. That stays, I do a lot of work with neuroscientists, and by writing it yourself, that gets it into your brain better. And as I say, engineer good sleep. For the next 4 weeks, I want you, and you should be doing this in life in general, really, but you should be getting up and going to bed at the same time. If you struggle with good sleep, mindfulness, and meditation will help you. Blue light is awful for sleep, so you want to be off any machines 2 hours before bed. You might think this is crazy. You may be familiar with Haaland, the Man City striker, probably the best striker in the world. He wants to keep improving, be even better a striker. At 6 o'clock every evening, he puts on his blue light glasses. He doesn't watch any TV after 6 without his blue light glasses on. 2 hours before bed, he doesn't watch any screens at all. Yeah, because he knows from all the science that blue light destroys your potential for getting good sleep. So yeah, have good sleep hygiene, engineer good sleep. It's one of the key things to good cognitive health. Yeah. Nutrition, a good gut health is another thing, which lots and lots of research is showing. So if you can, I'm not going to go and spend time talking too much about that now, but have a look at gut health and have a look at good sleep. That's really going to help you become, a successful student. So they are my tips. Okay. How are we doing for time? I think we're just at the point where I'm going to open this, or we're going to have a few Q&As. So I have some Q&As somewhere for me. I'm just having a little look. We're not going to get too much into the minutiae of things. Mark allocation and time management, Charles, you asked that question quite early on. I think we've answered it, but really important to manage both. They both go hand in hand. So the mark allocation determines how much time you're going to spend on things. Should we have reviewed everything in the study hub, or is reviewing previous questions the best? I think you need to have got familiarity and have a strategic perspective, Lindsay, on everything in the study hub, for sure. The examiners are employed to test what's on the syllabus, which is written by the ACCA. The syllabus is created because the workplace feels that we need accountancy graduates with these skills. So, the two go hand in hand. So, yes, you should have a strategic understanding. How do you understand the answers in the back of the exam kits? There's only two. They're actually I would stick with the Study Hub. They've got questions on there. Exam kits, I think, for the last couple of years have not been reviewed by the examining team, but most of the answers in the exam kits, the original official ones were a BPP and a Kaplan kit. They tended to use past exam tutorial answers. Now, those answers were quite fat and thick and beyond what would be expected of a student in a real exam. So don't be kind of stressed by these massive answers sometimes given after an exam. Those answers, if you read the small print, are designed to have a tutorial purpose and are not meant to be representative of what a student is expected to do in the real exam. You need to have, as I've said to you, I mean, if your tutor can give you examples of realistic answers, that's great. I mean, I would say a realistic answer would be an articulated sentence using verbs and adjectives in the context of the scenario, dealing with the requirements that are asked. That's what a reasonable answer will do. Yep, so that's important. So good question. Would my marks be penalised due to spelling errors in the exam answer? One, not at all. The examining or the ACCA don't see exams like performance management and maybe or advanced performance management and strategic business leader as examinations of English eloquence, I think the term is. As long as the marker can understand what you are saying, you will be given credit, and there is no negative marking. Yeah, there's no negative marking, only positive. So as long as you make it clear, don't worry about spelling errors, but try to make your arguments fairly logical and clear. And to help that, I would say a little bit of digestion of business English in business journals. Any good business journalism, you don't have to read Harvard Business Review if you can't get access to it, or The Economist, but any decent newspaper with good business analysis is worth a look. So thank you for that question, one. I would like to know how the percentage marks are calculated in my exam performance. I don't know the context of that question. Sorry. I mean, the markers are very strictly managed. Marking is a very scientific process. It's done electronically. The likelihood of error in marking is tiny. Yeah, it's tiny. I've been involved in marking for over 20 years, and I can back that up. Okay. Let me go to can I answer in bullet point form? Well, why? Because a marker is not paid to interpret what you mean. A marker is paid to give credit for what you say. And by giving a bullet point, you're kind of inferring this, but I want to know more. It's not, if there's no because, if there's no so what, if there's no why, then I wouldn't recommend you do that. In this example, as I gave, there were 3 different requirements I've highlighted. Is there a strategy how we should allocate our time to 3 requirements? Yes, divide the total time by 3. As I did. I said up to about 10 minutes or so. So hopefully that helps you. What do you do in an exam when you're out of ideas? Well, I would try to visualize and picture what's going on here and what would be the issues here to try and help me come up with some ideas. That's what I would do. I have APM and advanced tax on the same day. How do I manage this? Oh my goodness. Well, I'm assuming they're at different times. I think it's, that's pretty tough, Tanvir, and well done you. I think it's absolutely critical that your brain muscle is in tip-top condition. So you need to be looking after it for the next 4 weeks. You need to be feeding it the right food. You need to be giving it time to rejuvenate. You need to be, getting the best sleep possible, and you need to be avoiding blue light, as I've said. Well, Gemma's saying if you're sitting two exams in the same sitting, good way is to have a timetable of living. Excuse me. That's what we need to do there. Oh, goodness me, this is a big long one. Should I practice? So Locke says, should I practice past questions in each topic? That would be good. Yes. Yeah, I also think you should have time when you're doing study. You should have time. Exercise is a great thing. When we're stressed, we produce a chemical called cortisol, and cortisol is able to be sweated out. So if you're exercising, you can sweat cortisol out. You can't really get rid of it in any other way. And also, when we exercise, we produce a chemical called endorphins, and endorphins are a really good counterbalance to our stress chemical cortisol. So that's really important that we do that as well. What advice would I give someone resitting APM? I would evaluate what you did last time and learn why you didn't pass the exam and do something different this time. If you don't have time to complete the entire question, do we still get professional skills marks? Yes, there's no negative marking. Obviously, it's better if you can do it all, but that would be what I would say. I've got a couple of things. Just for a 20-mark question, 10 points is enough. No, I think it's a high-risk thing to do, Manu. As I said, I was going for 70% of the marks. Yeah. You say you write general comments. I've said don't write general comments. You need to write comments in the context of the scenario. If you can do that, that will be fantastic. Okay, so some great questions there. Hopefully they are useful. I'll give you a kind of a 2-minute warning. If you have any more questions you would like to ask me, I'll deal with them. But again, we're talking about strategic questions for APM, not that my exam centre's closed. What can I do about it? I'm not sure I can do much, but ACCA local office can. Georgie says, how do you know what measure to use when it's asked about future growth? Well, I think, the measures you use would be in the context of the situation. So you might think about the business and what is relevant in that business. Yep. That's what I'd say there, Georgie. Stuart asks, what's the difference between an approach to SPL and APM? Well, I would say I think doing SPL before APM helps. SPL teaches you to think logically and laterally. I mean, there is a difference. There is a bit more technical stuff in APM. SPL is much more of an applied exam, asking you to behave as a leader in the workplace. There is similarities. I would think that if you do SPL and then you want to do APM, it does help. But also the ethics and professional skills module helps both SPL and APM. Order of answering questions, I would just answer them as they are asked. Yeah, I would answer them in the order that they're asked. Can I demonstrate on screen the planning we should do so that the examiner will go through that part? Well, as I explained, in the word processing area, we might copy and paste a question, and then we've created some subheadings, and then for each of those subheadings, we might give, for the sake of trying to get 10 marks, 3 or 4 points, and then for each of those points, we want to develop and articulate a point with verbs and adjectives, synthesizing the information. Yep, so that's what I'd say. I think I've answered how to take two papers together, and I've answered what order would I take it. So great. Thank you for those questions. To summarize, as I've said, keep away from fake news. Keep to ACCA official resources. Yeah, because they have had the eye of the examiner cast over them. Yeah, try and find people who specialize in the area for advice. There's lots of stuff online, but keep away from fake news on Facebook. Yeah, stick to ACCA resources, which are fantastic. There's videos on the YouTube channel as well. Okay, so thanks for those questions. That's great. It made me, come up with some points I hadn't included in the slides. So fantastic. Thank you very much. Do you want to come in, Hazel?
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much, Sean. I'm just going to pop the slide back 1 second just to cover a couple of little points. But just we
Sorry.
noticed in
Yeah.
the Q&A that some people mentioned the new practice platform, and Sean mentioned it at the beginning. Don't worry, when you go into your MyCC, it is the practice platform that you can access from there. It was new in June, so if you have done exams in September, don't worry, you'll have used it already. But we did see quite a few questions come through of the mention at it at the beginning. And it was actually what I wanted to include in our final recap. So the platform contains specimen exams, past exam content, and you can self-mark your answers within the platform using marking guides and sample answers. It'll also allow you to track your performance, giving confidence to you to know that you're exam ready. And you'll also find the pre-December mocks on there from tomorrow. Also, the ACCA Study Resources YouTube channel is a great thing to keep it to have a look at, and you can find the latest videos to help you prepare for your exam. So you can find ones on there how to perfect your exam technique and exam-specific guidance to help build your confidence. And finally, our ACCA Study Hub that Sean mentioned as well includes online study content that covers the full syllabus. You'll find short quizzes to test your understanding as you progress through, and also practice and revision questions and flashcards to help you prepare for the exam. So that brings us to the end of today's live session, and I really hope that you found it useful and picked up some useful tips from Sean. Before we wrap up completely, just a reminder to check out the updated resources section at the bottom of your screen. There's helpful resources and links in there that will help prepare you for your exam. And as I mentioned at the start, don't worry if you've missed anything. Everyone who has registered today will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording so you can watch it all again if you want to. Thank you, Sean, for providing your valuable insights today, and also thank you very much to the team who have supported us in the back end to deliver today's session successfully. And finally, thank you to you all for joining today, and we wish you all the best for your exams.